Lionheart LH9 Design is really not that far extracted from the Daewoo DP51 or the K5. Now, it is made by S&T Motive, and basically Lionheart's collaboration with S&T really brought back the Daewoo into the American market with a lot of strength. Now, as I said, the design isn't much different. In fact, it's pretty much the same, but Lionheart wanted to go ahead and put on its own spin, and also the owner, come from the aerospace industry, he wanted to keep control of all the different tolerances, as far as intolerance being that, instead of saying, well, we can have it plus or minus, whatever the dimensions are in a certain part, like the metal thickness can be, 0.1 of an inch with plus or minus 10 thousandths. Well, the owner of Lionheart actually put in to his deal that he wanted to have strict control of that and make sure the tolerances and quality control was even larger, like even more intense, I guess I should say, than they were typically doing for the military contracts. So this platform is definitely upgraded a bit. There's a Cerakote finish instead of like a bluing or a parkerized finish. I'm not really sure what they were doing for the Daewoos. I never really knew anything about them until the Lionheart came out, and I found out, oh, it's basically a Daewoo again. And here's the funny thing: a lot of people are like, oh, well, when you crack the slide, it feels like it's on bearings. It's so smooth, but it jiggles around a lot. And here's the thing: that is not a bad thing. That's typically what makes a pistol function very well, is having looser tolerances. So shooting the heck out of your pistol and actually loosening it up a bit will actually help with the tolerances, and it'll ease how it'll make it easier to manipulate. So all in all, this design is actually quite well done. They put a lot of in the Daewoos. They put a lot of awesome engineering that tends to be pretty expensive into this. The 7075 T6 aluminum that this frame is, it's forged. The frame is forged out of that aluminum alloy, and that's actually a pretty expensive metal to make. The pressure that it's supposed to be able to withstand, the tensile strength, etc., and just the long fatigue life that it has is way better, and it's forged. So it's rolled over so that you don't have really many weak points at all. So the possibility of these frames cracking is very low, and in fact the Korean military has had little to no problems with that. Whereas people that like to compare this to the 226, they end up finding it hard to do so, because the 226 is uses billet steels, which actually is pretty much on a horizontal plane, because it's basically just a bar of steel, and their grains are actually exposed to cracking. And cast is random grains put together. It's just poured in, so it's random grains, no real consistency, so you can develop cracks after very high round counts, of course, but it can still happen a lot easier than if you're forging. Forging is typically very expensive to do, but it makes the pistols last a lot longer, which actually, if you look at it from a military perspective, it's better to have it that way. You have a 4140 slide, which is really not that bad at all. It's actually pretty standard to have slides under that, in that kind of metal, because it's not really, I would say it's not really that vital to have something that's ridiculously strong in the slide, because the slide doesn't actually see too much pressure. The most pressure that it sees is actually right here, because this thing will hit on the frame or a buffer of some sort. Then you have the 4150 steel for the barrel, which is pretty much the same as we use in our M4s, but without the chrome lining. And this thing is machined out, and it's, when S&T Motive machines out their barrels, this isn't something that Lionheart particularly likes, but they've dealt with it because it hasn't really had that many problems. It's kind of sloppy. It's not really shiny or anything else, but when I was talking to the owner of Lionheart, if your barrel's extra shiny, then that can actually have effects on the barrel life, apparently. And I guess wearing it in from these barrels that look like they have a lot of burrs is a little bit better, maybe. But anyways, let's go ahead and look on the inside of this pistol. I really like that they brought back this pistol to have a good amount of interest in the American market with Cerakotes. Novak sides, mine doesn't have it, of course, because it's an earlier model before they had collaboration. And they've got nice polymer grips, nice heat-resistant polymer grips. And they did a collaboration with Frog Lube to basically give everybody a head start, and I thought that was really cool, working with G-code and stuff. I wanted to point out something that's kind of interesting about this pistol. Number one, the trigger system is very much like the Beretta, and if you'll notice here, down here, in the trigger system, I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up, but right here in the center, that's basically the same sear system that the Beretta 92 series has. And then down the side, that long channel down the side right here, that is actually pretty much the same as the sear spring on the 92 series, if you've ever taken one of those apart. And the trigger return spring, very, very similar as well, but the basic silhouette and the body of this pistol matches the 5906. So you're looking at basically getting those holsters if you want to get your Lionheart a holster. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, you see these little channels on the slide here? These channels coincide with these rails right here in the frame. So if you see these, they stick out a little bit, and these are your frame rails that basically give you full length without having a full length, frame or frame rails that are full length. I'm not sure why they did that, but actually that design is also used in the car pistols, which is actually a pretty good design for keeping it very stable and relatively tight and basically lowering the friction, I suppose. But I guess that's the theory behind it. I'm not really sure. I'm not really the engineer here, but I do like this double action plus or triple action or fast action trigger. It's had several names over the years, but I do like the trigger system. I've actually come to really love it, and the safety is very easy to use. I don't really have too many issues with it, and some people may have gripes about it, but I don't really. I like the lockup method for the barrel. I like that it's sort of basically bulged out right at the end, and it seems like a very sturdy barrel. I like that it adopts the Browning high power lockup system, which actually is a pretty good lockup system. I do like, of course, that it's separate spring from the guide rod, kind of like a SIG, makes it really inexpensive to replace when it does wear down. So I would estimate that you're going to get about 15,000 rounds from this spring, if you're curious about that. But you can see the Cerakote in some places it chips, and then other like here on the rails here, it actually kind of chips away a little bit. But over here it sort of wears and chips in a combination, and it wears right here on the rails and on the hammer. But I like that they did a couple of different things. They basically give it a new hammer instead of that Sharp Commander hammer, old school Browning high power hammer. But overall, I like that they selected the Daewoo to bring back into the American market, because after learning about it a bit, I came to really respect the design, giving it forward slide serrations for you people that love to do press checks. I do like the original sights on this, and I know that they are willing to install it for you if you wish. If you buy it online, if you buy these pistols online, they will install these for you, or the night sight, and it'll be free of charge for the installation fee. But they typically come at a premium because the designs for these night sights are actually kind of uncommon, so you might be paying a premium. Excuse me. But I believe the magazine release is reversible, as I showed in my review. It basically is just a hook. You can probably turn it around and stick the hook right through. It's all the way. It's a hole that goes through both sides, the top and the bottom of this magazine release bar. But overall, I like this pistol. It does rack pretty smooth because it's made of looser tolerances to kind of basically make it a little bit more friendly to being completely interchangeable as far as parts are concerned. And the parts that Lionheart is making and the Daewoo's and the K5s, all the parts are interchangeable. So that's not really too much of a concern, but Lionheart is just making it more, being more anal retentive about the tolerances, not necessarily the fitting. And so you're not going to get a very tightly fit together pistol, but that's not really a big problem because that's the way it should be. 1911s are a little different, but even then people get it out of control when it comes to that. This is a 17 round magazine. It extends about as much as the 15 round magazines in the Mark II, so this is about 5.5 inches tall, and this is a Mech-Gar magazine, and I've had nothing but good success with it locking back the slide when firing. I did concentrate for a couple hundred rounds on just this magazine, so it works pretty well. And with this combination, you are basically getting the same amount of ammo if you intend to carry it as a Glock 19. So I don't really have any gripes there. So with that, that's pretty much it. I hope this video was helpful, and I apologize if this was really long, but that's how I feel about this design. So thanks a lot for watching, and visit my blog and my Facebook page, and the link down below. Thanks a lot.